To discuss the impact of the floods that have ravaged states across the country, I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the Minister for Environment, Hadiza Melafia. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the news at 10.
Thank you. Good evening.
It's a busy time for your ministry, I'm sure. Already we've seen what's happened in Anambra, to Kogi, to Edo, etc. And there are warnings that it's not yet over. More states might be affected and hit just as heavily as Kogi was. In your estimation, is this now a national disaster?
Yes, I do think it is, considering the number of states across the country, the extent of damage to infrastructure, the loss of lives. I think it calls for national attention.
Well, seeing that has happened that way, one question everybody seems to be asking is, this didn't take the government by surprise. The warnings were there from NIMET, from NEMAN, all the other agencies. From the beginning of the year, we had heard that there would be heavy flooding. But from the visuals we've seen and the amount of water levels and the amount of displacement of people, there doesn't seem to have been any precautionary measures. What we do see is an attempt to salvage the situation afterwards. Why would you say that's the case?
No, I think there was. I disagree. There were measures taken long before that. We have the flood early warning system. NIMET has been on air trying to call the attention of people. The reality is such that this is an international phenomenon globally. There's climate change, which is a reality. So no matter what kind of attention is sought, no matter the extent of awareness, considering the peculiarities of this country, you know that some people will refuse to move out of the floodplains. But of course, there were measures taken before, during and after.
I was trying to say that one of the major questions we have at the moment is what's going to happen to all the people who have been displaced. I mean, it's fine for officials to visit and see the extent of the disaster. Is there a coordinated attempt by the government, the federal government now, to see that everybody who's been displaced within the states have somewhere to go? Because the reality is that they're out of their homes.
Yes, there are coordinated attempts over and across the states. Each state has its own peculiarity. There are a few states that have IDPs for internationally displaced persons. They have designated areas. There are others that do not have. But the coordination is such that you find the federal government liaising with the states and local governments. And I must say that the visit by ministers was not just to go and see what has happened. The visit, at the instance of Mr. President, was for the ministers to go along with big-time contractors or professionals that would address issues immediately. Because in some cases, communities were isolated, there were no access roads, and where you could not even go to salvage what was left of these people. So in such cases, we had to go with competent professionals that would be able to address the issues immediately.
Since you were part of the team, can you give us a bit of an insight into what those concrete steps are going to be for anyone who's listening tonight, who's been displaced, who's in any of those states? What exactly is going to be done for them at the moment? I mean, generally speaking now.
Or what is going to be and what has been, a lot has been done. Perhaps you may say, considering the magnitude, there's never enough really when it comes to tackling issues like that. But there has been very good coordinations. In Kogi State, for example, we identified areas where displaced people were settled. We liaised with the governor of each state where we went to. We also know that NEMA has been up and doing. They have taken large quantities of materials, and these are the initial things that you need to do. The Ministry of Health, the Federal Ministry of Health, has been on ground because obviously when you have something like this, it's going to rub up on so many things, sectors of the economy, so many sectors of people's lives. You have water from drainages, soakaways, and so on, the chances of having epidemics and contaminated water. And we are working together with all the relevant arms of government to see that the best is given considering the circumstance with in which we find ourselves.
I'm looking at some of the contributions from individual states. Let's look at Edo State, for instance, 100 million. That's quite a sum at that state level. What is the federal government doing in terms of funding at this time, even though we do know that the Senate have asked the presidency to send a supplementary budget, etc.? How soon are we going to see that, and what's going to come to them?
Oh, sure, very soon. Even before the president left for the United Nations General Assembly, he had given directives as to what should be done, at least to ameliorate as a beginning to take care of these issues. I did mention that medical and health workers are on the ground. This was confirmed by the governor in Kogi State. I also have mentioned that NEMA has moved in. The question of Edo is a very commendable effort, but I know that you must agree that we need to do something beyond just an immediate. I'm sure what the governor did is what everyone is supposed to do. What can they get first? What is the first step that we can take to at least soothe the condition that they find themselves, the nerves that they find themselves in? And I know that very soon, in the next couple of hours, you would find a concrete statement from government.
Well, with predictions of more rain and perhaps more flooding spreading to different states, and I'd like to ask you, as Minister, are you worried at all? Does the ministry have everything under control? Do we have nothing to worry about?
Wow. Am I worried, my dear? Sure I am. Is there any Nigerian who is not worried? I doubt if there's any. I am worried indeed, because I have seen it all. It's not enough. Perhaps some people are reporting from what they hear, but I have seen it. I've been across 7 states in the last 72 hours. I've seen a number of lives lost. I've seen the devastation to infrastructure. I've seen the loss of so much farmland. So many farms have been washed away across the states, from Plateau State to Jigawa, from Benue, if you see what is happening in Benue and Kogi. And for everyone who is normal, there's hardly any way that you can help yourself but not get worried. Sometimes a little bit emotional even.